For decades, the world spoke of Africa as a continent of dependency, a place waiting for help, direction, or rescue. But something is shifting. From the heart of Burkina Faso, a spark has ignited, not in speeches but in cement, not in promises but in power plants, not in theory but in tarmac and grain. They once said Africa needed the West to build. They said Burkina Faso was landlocked, locked out, locked down. But today, a new generation rises, and at its helm is a young soldier turned statesman, laying not just bricks but destiny itself. We are not here to talk about politics. We are not here to repeat slogans. We are here to count factories, trace roads, measure energy flows, and witness a nation building itself in real time. Stay with us. This is not just infrastructure. It's the foundation of freedom. Subscribe and ride with us into a new African dawn. Because from here on, every bridge built, every grain milled, and every light turned on is not just a statistic. It is a signal. Africa is not waiting. Africa is choosing. Let us begin with the sky. Because as any great vision teaches us, the future is first imagined from above. In the dusty outskirts of Ouagadougou, steel beams rise toward the clouds. This is not the setting for another foreign aid ceremony. This is the site of the Ouagadougou-Donson International Airport, a world-class aviation hub that is poised to become the beating heart of West Africa. Replacing the outdated city airport, this project is no mere terminal. It is the air bridge to sovereignty. Built to accommodate over 1 million passengers annually, it features expanded runways, modern terminals, cargo logistics, hospitality zones, and commercial linkages. Once labeled landlocked, Burkina Faso is repositioning itself as land-linked, not through theory but through architecture. They used to say, too small to matter, too poor to build. But President Ibrahim Traoré is rewriting the narrative, not with words but with runways. Parable. A bird with broken wings may struggle to fly, but once its wings are healed, it soars higher than ever before. This airport is the healing of Burkina Faso's wings. From sky to soil, the next revolution lies beneath the earth. The National Gold Refinery, launched in November 2023, is where dust becomes destiny. For decades, Burkina Faso exported raw gold while foreign refineries raked in profit. Not anymore. The refinery now processes 400 kilograms of gold per day, nearly half a ton on Burkinabe land, by Burkinabe hands. That gold is no longer shipped raw. It is refined, branded, valued, and exported with dignity. It employs over 100 direct workers and creates over 5,000 indirect jobs, contributing directly to the nation's financial sovereignty. Parable. If you sell mangoes before they ripen, you'll always stay hungry. But process them into juice, jam, and dried fruit, and you'll feed a village. Traore is not just exporting gold. He is exporting dignity. From gold to grain. Because what is sovereignty without bread? In February 2025, the Moulin Double Star wheat flour plant opened its doors in Gampela, east of Ouagadougou. Costing over 15 billion CFA francs, this state-of-the-art facility is now the main supplier of wheat flour for the country. For years, Burkina Faso depended on wheat imports from Europe and North Africa, despite having the land, the hands, and the hunger to grow its own. That dependence ends now. Under Traoré, wheat is grown, harvested, milled, and packaged entirely within Burkina Faso. The baguettes in the markets, the cakes in the bakeries, and the pasta on the shelves now tell a story of national pride. Sovereignty on a plate. And if food begins with grain, it must also include the red fruit that colors every African kitchen. Enter Sotomato, a tomato paste factory with roots in Bobo Dioulasso and Yako. Built alongside massive investment in farming inputs, from irrigation pumps to fertilizer subsidies, Burkinabe farmers now grow tomatoes at industrial scale. These tomatoes are processed, canned, and sold, not just in local markets, but across West Africa. For decades, Africa imported tomato paste from Italy and China. Today, Burkina Faso competes. This is no minor achievement. It is an agricultural renaissance. Parable. Why buy shoes from abroad when your village has a skilled shoemaker? Traore reminds us that the answers were always within reach. One might ask, what good is food or gold if it cannot reach the people? This is why roads matter. Under Traoré's leadership, the government launched an ambitious national roads and highways expansion plan. Among key routes under construction or rehabilitation are Boromo Bobo Dioulasso, These aren't just roads. They are the arteries of economic life. Imagine trucks carrying flour from Gampela, gold from Ouagadougou, tomatoes from Yako, and cement from Sizini, all flowing like lifeblood through these newly paved veins. Parable. A tree with strong roots must also grow strong branches. These roads are the branches that carry prosperity outward. Across wheat, gold, airports, and asphalt, a nation once dismissed is now designing its future. This is not about aid. This is not about charity. This is about Burkina Faso standing on its own foundations. But for every structure raised, there is a wave of emotion, resistance, and reaction, within and far beyond its borders. The cranes have done their lifting. The roads are open. The lights are on. But what follows concrete is always more than calculation. It is feeling. The people of Burkina Faso are not reacting to a policy paper. They are reacting to the sight of planes landing at Donson, the sound of grinding wheat in Gampela, the taste of local tomato paste on their table. Their reaction? One word repeated like a heartbeat across homes, markets, and schools. Wow. Because for too long, Burkina Faso was the punchline to stories of poverty and aid. But today, across social media, in rural towns and urban intersections, the message has changed. Now they say, "We build." In Bobo Dioulasso, when the National Mobile Field Hospital was unveiled, veterans and soldiers stood not just in formation, but in silent awe. For the first time, a state-of-the-art medical unit, equipped with ICUs, surgical theaters, and mobile deployment capability, was handed directly to the Ministry of Defense. In the crowd, a father of a wounded soldier said, "This time my son will not be flown abroad. He will be healed here on the land he defended." Such moments are more than emotional. They are structural. When the Faso Danfani textile revival was announced, tailors reopened long-closed shops. Judges in national courts swapped colonial black gowns for hand-woven, indigo-dyed Burkina cloth. The symbolism was sharp. This was not just fashion, it was identity reclaimed. Online, Burkina youth began posting side-by-side images. Imported tomato cans versus Sotomato labels, foreign flour sacks versus Gampela gold, Chinese cement logos versus Sizob packaging. Hashtags like "Car built in Burkina" and "Sovereignty on a plate" began trending in regional circles. But the most striking shift was linguistic. In everyday speech, phrases emerged. This is the new Burkina. We are land-linked now. We don't export poverty anymore. We export pride. This emotional groundswell didn't go unnoticed. Pan-African intellectuals began citing Burkina Faso in lectures across universities in Ghana, Senegal, and South Africa. Youth leaders referenced Traoré's economic program as a case study in grassroots sovereignty. One student activist in Nairobi said, "If Traoré can industrialize with tractors and truth, what excuse does my government have?" Even artists joined the chorus. A rap single titled "From Dust to Gold," inspired by the national refinery, topped local streaming charts. Its lyrics declared, "We don't ship raw, we refine and roar. From Ouaga to Lagos, the lion wakes once more." Traditional media also shifted tone. While some foreign outlets remained skeptical, calling Traoré's plans ambitious but uncertain, others described him as Africa's industrial general. Al Jazeera ran a segment titled "Burkina's Bold New Road, Asphalt and Autonomy." But this wave of pride was not just emotional, it was participatory. In villages around Yako and Fata Ngurma, local cooperatives began forming spontaneously. Tomato farmers, wheat growers, small-scale miners, all seeking to plug directly into national value chains. It was as if the infrastructure didn't just connect places, it connected people to purpose. Still, with each new opening came resistance from old powers, whispers from former colonial allies, economic forecasts painting gloom, NGO analysts warning of over-centralization. But the people's response was clear. Let them talk. We will build. Parable. When the water finally reaches the roots, the tree does not ask permission to grow. It simply grows. What Burkina Faso is experiencing is more than infrastructure. It is an emotional renaissance, a psychological unshackling, a reclaiming of national narrative in stone, steel, but for every celebration at home there is scrutiny abroad. And what happens when sovereignty in action begins to challenge global norms? Infrastructure, when done right, doesn't just build roads. It reroutes destinies. In the months following the wave of inaugurations, from energy plants to gold refineries, life on the ground in Burkina Faso began to shift. The change was not just visible in satellite imagery, it was felt in the kitchen, on the job site, at the voting booth. Take employment. The National Gold Refinery alone created over 100 direct jobs and stimulated 5,000 indirect opportunities from security to supply chains. But more than jobs, it created ownership. Workers didn't just clock in. They told their children, "Your father refines gold, not Europe." In Gampella, the opening of the flour mill sparked a domino effect. Local farmers began switching from low-value crops to wheat, encouraged by government contracts and better yields. Bakeries reported a 40% reduction in imported flour. The price of bread stabilized. Households began seeing real shifts in purchasing power. The tomato sector tells a similar story. Where once imported paste from Italy and China dominated shelves, now tomato cans filled markets from Yaco to Bobo Dioulasso. Urban retailers noted a 20% drop in wholesale tomato paste costs, savings passed on to consumers. Farmers, meanwhile, reported doubling their incomes in a single growing season. But the ripple effects reached far beyond economics. Local government units, previously sidelined, began mobilizing to coordinate with infrastructure projects. In areas where new feeder roads were built, such as Boromo and Kupela, mayors initiated rural development plans to align with the transport routes, opening health posts, schools, and cooperatives. Most remarkable, however, has been the shift in political discourse. Traoré's policies have reframed the definition of governance. Where former leaders promised democracy through borrowed capital, this government delivers democracy through cement, visible, usable, undeniable. Citizens began demanding performance, not patronage. In town hall meetings, slogans changed from "When will we get help?" to "When will we build ours?" Even opposition voices had to adjust. Rather than criticizing the idea of building, they began debating how to build better. For the first time in decades, national dialogue was less about elections and more about execution. At the heart of it all is a powerful shift toward economic sovereignty. No longer tethered to aid cycles or commodity exports, Burkina Faso is beginning to shape its own fiscal future. The central bank reported increased foreign reserves due to refined gold sales. Trade deficits began to narrow. The national brand began to mean something again, not just in speeches, but in exports with "Made in Burkina" labels. But economic sovereignty is not just about gold or flour, it is about psychological liberation. When citizens walk past factories and say, "We did this," they are claiming more than infrastructure. They are claiming voice. Parable. The man who owns the hammer decides which house to build. But the man who owns the blueprint chooses the future. And with every new foundation laid, the Burkinabe people are redrawing that blueprint. This transformation is not without its growing pains. In some regions, the rapid pace of development strained logistical capacities. Rural clinics struggled to meet demand as feeder roads connected previously isolated communities. Energy grids faced pressure as biogas plants came online and demand surged. Yet these are the struggles of growth, not decay. In classrooms, students write essays not about leaving the country for opportunity, but about building careers in agriculture, logistics, or energy. University lectures shift from dependency theory to value chain integration. In homes, parents no longer just hope, they plan. Burkina Faso, a nation once caught in the crosswinds of geopolitics and structural adjustment, is now staking its place in history through grain, gold, roads, and reason. But if the local impact is so profound, what does the world make of this new trajectory? And who stands to lose or gain from Burkina Faso's rise? As bulldozers reshaped the earth in Burkina Faso, so too did they disturb the diplomatic landscape. From the outside looking in, Traoré's infrastructure offensive was met with a mixture of awe, suspicion, and recalculation. For some regional actors, it signaled hope. For others, it triggered quiet alarms. The African Union, in its early statements, praised the nation's assertion of structural independence. Leaders from Mali, Guinea, and Niger began referencing Burkina Faso's model in their own development speeches, a signal of potential Pan-African alignment beyond slogans. ECOWAS, however, found itself walking a diplomatic tightrope. While it could not publicly criticize road building or food sovereignty, internal memos leaked in June 2025 revealed concerns that Traoré's model challenges conventional macroeconomic frameworks. Translation: too much independence too quickly. International financial institutions treaded carefully. The World Bank requested meetings to assess the gold refineries' impact on regional trade flows. The IMF issued mild warnings about inflationary risks, though notably stopped short of condemnation. Quietly, however, some donor-backed NGOs were reassessing their programs, anticipating reduced relevance. But it was the United States that responded with the most calibrated ambiguity. Officially, the State Department described the projects as an encouraging example of African innovation and ownership. Unofficially, a leaked diplomatic cable from the U.S. Embassy in Accra read, "Burkina Faso infrastructure may set a precedent for resource-led anti-aid growth that could alter American leverage in the region." In media coverage, global outlets took varying positions. France 24 aired a special on Burkina's bold bet with cautious optimism. The Guardian published an op-ed titled, "From Rice Fields to Refineries, Can Burkina Faso Outbuild Dependency?" Yet despite the narratives, none could ignore the results. International trade monitors reported a 40% increase in Burkina Faso's processed goods exports in the first half of 2025. Regional airlines began eyeing Ouagadougou-Dansan Airport as a potential hub. Investors in Ghana and Senegal inquired about joint agribusiness ventures. The subtext was clear. The world might not fully approve, but it is paying attention. Parable: when the smallest village lights its own lamp, the entire valley notices, whether in celebration or in concern. And with each project, Burkina Faso is lighting lamps, not just of growth, but of geopolitical relevance. But what does this mean for the path ahead? Can one nation shoulder the weight of a continental rebirth? Or will the light it sparked spread before it flickers? What comes next after the roads are paved and the factories roar? For Burkina Faso, the answer lies not just in cement or crops, but in choices. The current trajectory is bold. A land once defined by extraction is now building from within. But sustaining that momentum demands more than vision. It requires strategy, resilience, and regional solidarity. In the short term, the opportunities are tangible. Export-ready goods like gold bars, tomato paste, and flour now flow from Burkinabe soil, offering new revenue streams. Renewable energy plants reduce long-term dependence on foreign fuel. Industrial training centers are emerging to align young workers with the new economy. If managed well, these assets could reposition Burkina Faso as a case study in homegrown industrialization, a model for other African nations seeking to shake off structural dependency. But the risks are just as real. Some warn of geopolitical isolation, particularly as international donors reevaluate relationships. Others point to internal pressure, how to manage growing expectations in regions that have yet to feel the full impact of reform. Infrastructure, after all, can be both bridge and battleground. Economic overextension is another challenge. Rapid development, if not paired with fiscal discipline, can strain national budgets and invite inflation. Traoré's government must balance speed with sustainability, ensuring that ambition doesn't outpace capacity. Still, the most powerful asset Burkina Faso holds is not gold or wheat. It is narrative control. By building instead of begging, producing instead of pleading, the nation is offering a different story for Africa, one of dignity, labor, and choice. And this story is already echoing beyond its borders. In Niger, Guinea, and Mali, youth leaders are watching closely. In Ghana and Senegal, policy analysts are asking new questions. Even in the diaspora, Burkinabe citizens report a renewed sense of pride, with remittances rising steadily in the first quarter of 2025. This is more than a national moment. It is a regional ripple, a continental possibility. Parable: when one hand begins to plant, the whole village gathers, and not to watch, but to sow. Burkina Faso's journey is far from over, but what it has already proven is seismic, that the soil of Africa is not barren. It was only waiting for hands that believed in its worth. And if this is only the beginning, then the final question must be asked. What kind of Africa will rise, now that one of its smallest nations has shown the world what is possible? From broken wings to soaring airports, from raw dust to refined gold, from foreign loaves to local bread, the story of Burkina Faso is no longer written in footnotes. It is being carved into steel, cast in concrete, and sewn into cloth. This is not just about infrastructure. It is about economic sovereignty, not as theory, but as touchable reality. Every flour sack milled in Gampela, every tomato canned in Yako, every drop of biogas powering a village in Bobo Dioulasso stands as quiet defiance against decades of dependency. For too long, Africa was expected to wait for aid, for permission, for validation. But Burkina Faso chose not to wait. It chose to build. And in doing so, it reminded the continent of a simple truth. We are not poor. We are rich in patience, in purpose, and in potential. And make no mistake, this is not the end of the journey. The roads are just opening. The refineries are just warming up. The maps are being redrawn, with Burkina Faso infrastructure no longer as gaps to be filled, but as arteries of ambition. So the question is not, can one country rise? The question is, what if this spreads? What if Niger builds its own refineries? What if Guinea powers its cities with solar, not silence? What if every young African from Bamako to Benin City looked at Traoré's model and said, we can do this too? This is how revolutions begin. Not in the storming of palaces, but in the pouring of concrete, the planting of wheat, the refusal to export raw. If this vision resonates, if it stirs something deep in your sense of justice and joy, do not scroll past. Subscribe, share, and walk with us. Africa is not a victim. Africa is not a market. Africa is a builder, and it is building on the foundation of economic sovereignty,